Hello and welcome to the Wisdom Workshop. Please like the video and subscribe with all notifications turned on so that you won't miss any of our wisdom improving videos. In 1913, the Central Bank of the United States was established. Guess what else was established in 1913? Tax Department. So when you consider all of this and then read Marx, he states that a progressive income tax is required for the growth of communism. Then, when they cut off the Keystone XL pipeline, inflation skyrocketed. The poor are already impoverished, but when gasoline prices rise due to inflation, the middle class suffers. And now when we go shopping, we look about and go to merchants because everything is on sale. We can't help ourselves, but we feel bad for the businesses right now since the people are going bankrupt. So is the intention evil? Robert Kiyosaki had a feeling things were going to become worse. He's unable to express himself. He predicted a major crash in 2008, and we're still crashing now. Ray Dalio stated that we're now in a depression. So that's why he says what he says, and the freedom of the press even got him censored there. So what's going on in America? He prepared a piece on Klaus Schwab, about whom he had only heard rumors. As a result, this program is really crucial for finding out what's going on, and we've been covering a very significant issue since 1971. What has happened to economic disparity, obesity rates, imprisonment rates, divorce rates, medium income debt levels, and everything else since 1971? It's the year we abandoned the gold standard. As a result, the entire planet fell off the tracks in 1971. When you distort money, you get many kinds of abnormalities, one of which is the WEF. He knew what had transpired in 1972. He was flying in Vietnam when he switched to the gold standard. He purchased his first Krugerrand in Hong Kong for roughly $50. Many people have heard of Davos, where every year the world leaders gather. Some call them the world elite, but he doesn't like to use that term because they're not elite in any way. None of us would hire them in our business. But the world leaders, the policymakers if you will, the think tankers gather every year in Davos. So you hear anything like the Davos dude or whatever, this public-private collaboration is their policy. Politicians and business leaders get together to develop policies, both public and private. As a result, they meet every year at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. So it was started by this man Klaus Schwab, who brought these individuals together to try to figure out a better way, a more equitable way to rule the globe. When you see the word equitable, you know what they're talking about. They're referring to Marxism. So what he's actually done is taken the same concepts you said we hadn't seen before, but of course we have, and it's the same notion being rehashed everywhere. As a result, it's all Marxism. So they gather international leaders, legislators, public and private sectors, and engage in what he refers to as a stakeholder capitalism. So instead of what Murray Rothbard stated about firms focusing on profit, Klaus Schwab believes that enterprises should focus on the community, ESG, or environmental social governance. That we should be equitable. And so they corrupted all of these things, but they want to achieve it by power and control, forcing people to submit rather than teaching them and giving them other methods. So they've done it through a public-private partnership, which means that if you don't agree with their views, there will be no money and no investment for you. And if these large corporations don't follow their principles and drive these things down, they don't receive money and are effectively forced out of the city. As a result, he's spent the previous 12 years studying macroeconomics and learning about a concept known as wealth transfers. Money does not vanish, it transfers, and when he lost his fortune, it was taken by someone else, which he did not enjoy. And it's occurring right now, so he recognizes there are certain periods and situations under which these wealth transfers occur. So he spent the last 12 years researching wealth transfers to find out how he might be on the receiving end of those things. He often refers to what Henry Kissinger stated, which he believes was more of a call to arms on their side than a warning to the world. As a result, he stated that if you control the food, you control the people. If you control the energy, you control the continent. And if you control the money, you control the globe. Many individuals are unaware of who Henry Kissinger was or whether he's still alive. He was Nixon's Secretary of State at the time. He opened the door to China, which was equally beneficial throughout Europe. During the period following World War II, when the world was being redrawn and peace was being established, and as a result, he was and continues to be tremendously influential. What are the current assault vectors? So we're running low on food. According to the UN, 868 million people may starve to death in the next 24 months. Just take a peek at what's going on in Sri Lanka right now. There is mass rioting going on because of corruption, and simple corruption is what it is, but they're starving. Many people will go hungry in Ukraine. They are hungry and have little energy. Sri Lanka has the highest ESG score in the world at 98 out of 100. They published an article 2 years ago claiming that by 2025, they will be one of the richest nations, the poster child for ESG, environmentally sound, minimal effect on the environment, social score, and governance, do you have diversity on your board, and so on. They were supposed to be the state poster proclaiming that they would be the best by 2025 and that they will be one of the richest nations in the world based on this system. Sri Lanka is disintegrating at the seams right now. They're utterly gone. They defaulted on their debts, they have no money to import energy, they have no energy, and they are no longer in business. It's also vital to understand where we are in the globe right now, where this apex centralization central planning is. I like to argue that central planning always fails because there isn't enough data. They know there isn't enough data because you can't organize millions of people, which is what they're attempting to accomplish. So central planning's World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, World Trade Organizations, World Meteorological Association, and ultimately the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, and the Bank of International Settlements. Nobody understands the Bank of International Settlements. It is known as the central bank of central banks. According to his worldview, the Bank of International Settlements is at the top of the org chart. Below the BIS, there are certain think tanks such as the World Economic Forum and the Club of Rome. So they're the policymakers, and they push it down to the next row in the org chart to the policy enforcers, who are the governments, who sit a few levels down. So it's a banker coup, and they utilize this bank or the BIS at the top to push these ideas through think tanks and then down to polling forces, and we're at the bottom of the subjects of all of that. So Klaus Schwab is sitting on top of the world, hobnobbing with all these folks flying their private planes over to Davos, lecturing us that we need to cut back on our energy use and instructing us that we must consume the bugs. This is available on their website. They're discussing why we should eat bugs or be more environmentally conscious. Nicole Kidman did a commercial in which she ate bugs. That's what they're showing on TV right now. The first vector of assault is food. So he was just on Fox Business, and they questioned him about a UN article headlined, "Why it's good to be hungry, why being hungry is good." They claim that we need people to be hungry because there are so many things that need to be done that no one would do unless they were hungry. That was an article from the United Nations website. Fox got him on the show to talk about it, but they took it off within half a day because of the outrage. So whenever Marxism was attempted in Russia in the early 1900s, around 25 million people died of starvation. During Mao's Great Leap Forward, around 50 million people died from starvation. They also murdered them. We're talking about nearly 1 billion people today, so shouldn't we be striving to get as much food out as possible at a time when nearly 1 billion people might be starving to death? We would do everything we could, but in Holland, they have shut down the farms because they're attempting to take over their property and stop them from growing not only food, but also cattle and meat. Massive protests are taking place in Holland at a time when we desperately need more food. Farmers in the United States are being paid not to plant. They're not permitted to grow on portion of their property, so they petitioned the Secretary of Agriculture saying, "Hey, let us plant so we can obtain more food." And they were denied. It's not consistent with our agreement for the Paris Accord, which Trump had pulled us out of, and then Biden's very first day in office, the most important thing he had to do by executive order was put us back into the Paris Accord so we can't grow food in the United States because of climate change. Holland can't grow food, and now demonstrations are happening all over the world, and they're becoming bigger, so there's an energy crisis going on throughout Europe. They don't pay natural gas, so they rely on Russia for it, but we need natural gas in Europe to generate fertilizer, which we need to grow food. Natural gas is also required for food processing. One of these 3 items mentioned by Henry Kissinger is food, followed by energy, and finally by money. And this is what James Rickards was referring to. CBDC refers to central bank digital currencies that are used for the greater benefit. Putin remarks that Americans must sacrifice and suffer in order to defeat Russia. It's for the greater good, but the Achilles heel is the third and most important one: money. He had 10 points in the Communist Manifesto, the 5th of which was the establishment of a central bank. So central banks are part of Marxism, which is the ultimate purpose. The central banks represent communism, the centrally planned economy. The American system, not Americans, but the majority of people are utterly uneducated. When communism was defeated in the 1970s, although it truly began in the 1960s, it moved underground and entered American campuses. So they've done an excellent job of playing this long game, beginning with influencing the perspectives of college-age students who have now gone into media, who have now moved into government, and this dates back to the 1960s, when Colombia had its first riots. It was anti-Vietnam War, and when he returned from Vietnam, he was pelted with eggs, spit on, and dubbed baby murderer by college students. It hasn't gotten any better now that we have TikTok, and TikTok is scrambling their brains into scrambled eggs. It's a Chinese company. One thing we have going for us is that their ideas don't work. When left to their own devices, they fail. According to Nietzsche, that which is failing shall ye also push. So it's already fallen, the system is disintegrating, and the financial system is done, as though the EU is about to split up. They're unlikely to be able to address their bond problem over there. The PIGS nations down below are finished. Germany has lost its position, and since energy prices are too high, the EU is on the danger of a collapse. Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain are the PIGS. So the southern nations and the European nation must repeatedly bail out Italy and Greece because they lack productivity. Germany has been Europe's production engine, but they have suddenly become a net importer since energy costs have become so high that they can no longer afford to create. They must import their energy, but why must they import their energy? They turned off all of their nuclear reactors. Over the last decade, they've been closing them down, and as a result, their energy prices have increased by 8 times. But France still has inexpensive electricity since they still utilize nuclear power. So Europe has vast supplies of shale gas, much like the United States, but they don't want to extract it. Humans can withstand a lot of abuse from governments, but when you can't eat or feed your family, it's game over. They've been going to the streets in the same way that we saw truckers do in Canada, but now it's farmers with tractors, and they're taking these tractors and making the Canadian truckers look like child play. They are out in force. Some of the farmers were detained. The farmers went to the police station, surrounded them, and forced them to release the farmers, and they've been filling up the city with manure. They've blocked the airports, and now the fishermen are blocking the ports. Farmers stormed into the military installation and began hauling jets out of the military and placing them on the highways to obstruct traffic. But now that it's extended to Poland and Germany, all farmers are banding together in opposition. So it's backing up because the drain became stuck and is now backing up on Klaus Schwab and his pals. Then now they're saying, well, if we can't grow food, then no food, so you get no food. And the shelves are empty. As a result, he feels that we're currently at war. There's no freedom without payment freedom and without money freedom. So we have freedom of speech, but if I don't have money to purchase a phone, get online, print a brochure, or establish a website, I don't have freedom of speech, and if I have freedom of assembly but can't afford to put petrol in my vehicle to travel to the assembly, I don't have freedom of assembly. It means exactly what it sounds like, therefore you owe nothing to be joyful. Marxism believes that if you could take away your private property, you could live in a commune like communism, and we could take away the human urge to strive and have more, since it's what's poisoned us. This capitalism system motivates me to work more and achieve more, and if we could eliminate it, people would be happier. Because we're dissatisfied right now because we don't have what we want, we're constantly trying, we're always having to work more, and if we can take that away, we'll be happier. But that's what people think. So you'll own nothing and be content since you won't have to work for it, and you won't see anyone else having something you don't, and they believe in utopia, but they don't realize there's human nature to your point. We're all wondering if that was intentional or a mistake. The true axis of conflict is between the individual and the collective, who is attempting to draw them into these groupings and rob them of their distinct identity. This is communism, command and control. It's called free market capitalism, but what's more significant is that we're fighting for our liberties. Remember when they were censoring physicians during the COVID-19 pandemic and you couldn't say anything? It's horrible what's occurring now. So we must fight for our liberties above everything else, not for capitalism. If you want to be a Marxist, you should be a Marxist. It's none of my business who you sleep with, but don't take away the freedom of the Americans. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe with all notifications turned on if you enjoyed the video.